Hello. So we're going to build this little activity here. We have some instructions that tell people to click on the correct area, and then what we're going to do is we're going to show one text object and an arrow, and then have people click on the correct hotspot over that object. If they get it wrong, then we will show a try again message. They'll have to close that to continue the exercise. So we have most of the objects set up. We have some sort of device here. It looks like a monitor control for microphone input. I'm not entirely sure. But it doesn't matter. It has some sort of interface and it has some buttons and knobs and things. And we have a bunch of hotspots. And I didn't bother naming these to correlate with this. I just sort of left them with their generic names, like hotspot 1, hotspot 2, hotspot 3, and so on and so forth. The only difference is that this first hotspot does kind of correlate to what we're asking for first. So this is the microphone input. I could go through and call this hotspot mic input, and then call this check mark, mic input check mark, and this mic input arrow. But I just call these, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, check 1 through 7, and then these hotspots do correspond to this. So this is the first one, this is the second one, and then this is the third one and fourth one. So for the most part, we can just get away with matching up 1 to 1 and 2 to 2 and 3 to 3 and so on and so forth. So we are going to have to change a couple of things. We will want to add one big generic incorrect hotspot. So I'm going to grab another hotspot here and just place it over the whole thing. This means that whenever they click somewhere that's not one of these other hotspots, it will register as an incorrect answer. So for example, if they clicked on this direct monitor button, we would just count that as incorrect. So for this one, I'm going to call this incorrect hotspot, and I'm going to layer it below my other hotspots so that if they were to click here, it would catch this one first and not the big incorrect hotspot. And just for my peace of mind, I'm going to change this fill color to red, just so that I can tell them apart. So the other thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to turn off the start visible property for all of my check marks. So we'll select all of them, turn off their start visible property, and also these text objects. So I'm going to select all of them except for the first one and set them to not start visible, and the same for my arrows. Select 2 through 7 and turn off their start visible property. All right, so when we preview this now, what we will see is some instructions. We'll see an arrow and what we're supposed to click on. We'll see the image, and all of those hotspots are there. You can see my mouse turns to a hand pointer to let me know that this is interactive. So one of the reasons that we created the big red catch-all incorrect hotspot is so that people can't tell, where the hot areas are. Basically, this whole area has a mouse pointer. So for example, if we were to turn off that start visible property, then it would be clear that this is not one of the correct answers. You can see my mouse has not turned into the hand pointer, but then this is a correct answer. So it's up to you if you want the giant incorrect hotspot. We like to do that generally because it doesn't give away, what the possible correct answers might be. So I'll turn that back on. All right, so at this point, we can start creating a little bit of interactivity. So what we're going to do is we're going to detect whether or not this arrow is visible, and if it is visible, then we will determine what the correct answer is. Or rather, we will say when the correct object is clicked, we'll check to see if these arrows and these check marks are in a certain state. So let's just start with hotspot 1. So I'm going to click on that and say when that is clicked, sometimes we want to show this check mark, and sometimes we want to show the try again message. So we'll need a condition. I'll go under control and grab this if do else. And here we're going to check the visibility of two objects. So I can just remove this. Well, we'll keep it. We'll go to value and grab this and block. And what I want to know is this right arrow visible? So I'm going to select it, go over to my action canvas, scroll down in the flyout panel, and get this right arrow dot text. Now I don't care about the text that's in that arrow, so I'll use a drop-down and point to the visibility. So I think what we're going to do is we're going to hide these arrows. So I actually don't need this and. I only care about the visibility. So we'll remove that. We'll put this back in. We'll check for the visibility, and we'll see if that equals true. So go to value, grab a true block. There we go. Okay, so now when this hotspot is clicked, if this arrow 1 is visible, then we want to show the check mark, right? Because if they click here and this arrow is visible, that means that they're on the mic input. So we're going to show our check mark 1. If the right arrow is not visible, I guess at this point we would also want to say hide our right arrow and then probably show the next text object and the next arrow. But we'll get to that in a minute. But what happens if they get it wrong? Well, then we'll want to show our try again layer. So I'll select that up here in the cast and say show try again. And once that's shown, we need to be able to get rid of it. So I have this close button in here. We'll say when they click on that, then we will hide our try again. So let's go ahead and test this out and make sure that it is working. We'll go ahead and preview. And let's get it wrong. We haven't really done anything with any of these other hotspots yet, so we don't get any feedback. But once we select it correctly, then we get our check mark, and our arrow disappears. So we're on the right path. So let's go ahead and show the next couple of objects here. So we'll show arrow 2 when they get it correct, and we'll show the next dialog or instructions. All right, so we have this one mostly set up. Let's go ahead and set up hotspot 2. So what I can do is just duplicate this entire action and move it down here. And then we'll need to update this. So we care about hotspot 2. We care about right arrow 2. And we'll show check 2. And we'll hide right arrow 2. We'll show the next arrow, which would be 3. And then we need to show the next dialog here. So I'll just grab that and plug it in. So if I had called these labels 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, I would just pick the next drop down here. So I'm going to go ahead and repeat this process and probably speed up the video to match. So same process, we're going to duplicate and update these. All right, so we started on the 7th one, and at this point, we don't have an 8th arrow to show, and we don't have an 8th label to show. So I'm just going to go ahead and delete these two things. If we wanted to have an all done message or firing a global event, we could turn that on at this point. So I'm just going to create a little message down here and say, good job. So we'll turn off the start visible property, and then we will tell it to show when they get that one correct. All right, and then finally, what we will do is we'll create another trigger for our hotspot, our incorrect hotspot. So regardless of what is currently shown, we're always just going to show the try again message at that point, right? There's never a time where that's going to be correct. It's by default our incorrect hotspot. All right, let's try this out. All right, so now that we have all of the different hotspots set up, if I click over here on not one of these objects, I get the incorrect message. If I click on the wrong one, so this is a correct one, we'll click on this one, we get the incorrect message. And then when I finally click on the correct area, that arrow is hidden, this check mark is shown, and then the next two objects are shown. And then I need to just repeat that. So if I go back to this first one and click it, it's now incorrect because I'm clicking on the hotspot 1, but my arrow 1 is not visible. Therefore, it's an incorrect selection. So then I just need to go through and get all of these correct. So gain 1 is this one, gain 2, we'll get it wrong, and then get it right. The inst button, we'll get that right. Monitor headphone jack, and this button. And finally is the good job message shows up at the end. All right, so this is working pretty well. And then if I want to, maybe what I'll do is I will stick these on top of each other so that it looks a little bit better. So now the arrow is right there. When we get that correct, it sort of looks like it changes into a check mark. So maybe I'll make those check marks a little bit bigger as well so that they kind of look more similar. But overall, that is the process. It's a bit redundant. I'm sure there's ways that we could create this using tag lists to get them all sort of synced up. But for 7 objects, I feel like this is pretty much the most straightforward way to do it. If we had 10 to 15 of these that we wanted to do, it might make sense to sort of build in some of the logic based onto the objects themselves so that we could see if it's the first object in a list and then see if the first hotspot object was clicked and get this to work a little bit more elegantly. But overall, this seems to work pretty well. So I'm going to take these check marks and just move them above my arrows and make them a little bit bigger. The last thing that I'm going to do is when this incorrect message is shown, I'm also going to put a mask up here because right now, technically, they can still click on the objects behind. So I could get this correct, even though my incorrect message is shown here. I can continue this this process while my incorrect message is being shown. So the last thing that I need to do is go to my try again layer. And what I will do is I will create a shape object, just a rectangle, and I'm going to place it here over this whole area and make sure it's at the bottom of that layer and change some of the properties here. So I'm going to get rid of the line, set that to 0. The fill, I'm going to use a white color, and I'm going to set the transparency up to maybe 50%. Let's see how that looks. So we'll get it wrong. we get the message, and the white shape, the semi-transparent white shape, sort of blends into my background, and it also blocks the mouse from clicking on the hotspots below. So now I'm stuck here until I click the exit button, and then I can see this again. So this rectangle here is acting as a mask, and of course I do want to make sure that it's below my close button and my message, otherwise those will appear grayed out and I won't be able to click on my close button. So the mask will need to be below the other objects in this layer. And just a quick summary of the actions that we're doing here. So again, when a particular hotspot is clicked, let's use hotspot 4 as an example. So when hotspot 4 is clicked, we're checking to see if right arrow 4 is currently visible, right? Because we show right arrow 4 when, after they've gotten through 1, 2, and 3. That's the only time that we show right arrow 4. So if it's currently visible, this is sort of the active object that we care about. So when they click hotspot 4, we are showing the check mark, hiding the right arrow, and then showing the next one and the next label. But if they click hotspot 4 and one of the other arrows are currently visible, then it's not the correct item that we're asking about at the moment. So let's say they clicked hotspot 4 first, then we would just show the try again message.